Hi everybody, welcome to the True Crime Nurse. My name is Katarina. I also go by Kat. I am a registered nurse that loves all things nursing and true crime. To give a little bit of background, growing up, I watched the first 48 and 48 hours Unsolved Mysteries and so many other shows with my aunt. And that's where my hobby and passion for seeing investigators solve cases actually began. My aunt was my hero, and she played a significant role in my life. She's no longer here with us, and I miss her so much. She was a registered nurse just like me, and I actually went to the same nursing program that she did. She's the reason that I love the true crime space so much, and I'm dedicating this channel to her. My desire for this space and our community is to provide additional insight from a healthcare worker's perspective, whenever possible, of course. Now, I will be posting on current events like I am today, and sometimes in these cases, like for instance today, I won't have an opportunity to weigh in from a nursing perspective, especially because this is an active investigation. But my goal is to post nursing specific cases or opportunities where there's a large medical component that I can speak to as an educational opportunity. So that's the intention that I have with this space. I hope that you love it and that you stick around. So please like and subscribe. Comment down below any case suggestions that you might have, or if there's maybe a medical one that you have off the top of your head that you'd like me to talk about, I am happy to do so. And additionally, please let me know your time length that you like to see in these types of videos, because I know some people like one long video, some people like multiple parts, deep dives. Let me know. I will be discussing all of the cases in what's called SBAR format. Now, for those of you that don't know, SBAR stands for Situation, Background, Assessment, and Recommendations. In the hospitals or in anywhere that nurses work, that's actually a tool that we use to document and give report to each other. And I find it to be a valuable tool, but a unique way to kind of tailor nursing into the true crime space is for me to apply that here as well in my storytelling. It might change the order in which you're used to a little bit with cases, but I think that it's going to take an interesting spin, and I hope that you like it. With all of that being said, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it more than you know, and let's dig into today's case. Although I'm sure that many of us are aware of what's currently going on, Netflix on Monday of this last week, March 31st, released a documentary called Gone Girls, the Long Island Serial Killer. Let me tell you, I thought that I knew a lot about this case, and then I watched the documentary. There's just so much additional information that I honestly just wasn't even aware of or hadn't been reported much in the media, which of course Netflix would have rights to get additional inside information, right? But it's so interesting. Highly recommend that you watch it. Now, because it is an active investigation, a lot of evidence and additional context that you would typically see in these videos, it's being withheld, and that's to protect the integrity of not only the investigation, but also to ensure that the suspect, Rex Heuermann, receives a fair trial, and that's a right that unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that everybody has. Situation. So situation in the true crime space rather than the medical space, I'm going to be focusing on the discovery of the victims as well as the current status of the suspect. Gilgo Beach State Park is located on the south shore of Long Island, New York. Many describe it as a tranquil beach to surf and fish with family. That is until one fateful day in December. On December 11th, 2010, the remains of Melissa Barthélemy were found in the brush at Gilgo Beach alongside Ocean Parkway. This devastating discovery was the first of many more to come. Just 2 days later, 3 more victims were located in the same area: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Amber Lynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. These women were found all within a half-mile stretch along the beach. They were found bound and wrapped in burlap all along the side of the road, discarded like garbage. Upon investigation, the police found that these 4 women had much more in common than just their demise. They were all escorts and advertising on Craigslist. Now, before we continue, just as a little bit of housekeeping, I do want to pause here and say that this is not going to be the place to shame anyone's choices or speak ill of those that are no longer here to defend themselves. So please keep it courteous in the comments. Harbor any judgment or thoughts that you may have regarding sex workers, because this is not going to be the place for that. Now, although I'm a brand new baby channel over here, I do know that there are a lot of large creators that have actually had family members and loved ones in their comment section. And the last thing in the world I would ever want is to see something harmful and have a family member or friend or loved one see that. So please keep it respectful for this video and all others moving forward. So continuing on March 29th, 2011, several miles away from the first 4 victims nicknamed the Gilgo Four, a partial set of remains were found, and she was initially named Jane Doe number 5. It was discovered that in 2003, they had actually found partial remains of a woman named Jessica Taylor in Manorville, New York, and the connection was made that the rest of her was located at Gilgo Beach, and she was in fact both Jane Doe number 5 / Jessica Taylor. So I know that that might have sounded a little bit confusing, but there was a woman that had been dismembered and they had found her and identified her back in 2003. Fast forward 8 years and they found the rest of her remains, but at that time they didn't know it immediately. Of course, they had to do it, by DNA matching. So that's so sad. A month later, in April of 2011, 3 more sets of remains were found at Gilgo Beach along Ocean Parkway. Among these victims were an unidentified Asian male, a female toddler, and a woman named at the time Jane Doe number 6. Fast forward to 2020, Jane Doe number 6 was identified as Valerie Mack, a 24-year-old mother that had been missing for over 20 years. Could you even imagine being the family or anyone that cared about anyone then being gone for 2 decades with no answers? It's just twisted. 2 weeks after the 3 additional discoveries, 2 more victims were found roughly 40 miles east of New York City at Fire Island. Upon testing the remains, one of these victims was found to be the mother of the deceased toddler located at Gilgo Beach. In December of 2011, Shannon Gilbert's remains were found in the wooded marsh about 10 miles from where the Gilgo Four were found. Although the medical examiner ruled her death as undetermined for now, and many believe that she died of hypothermia in the cold waters of the marsh, Shannon was also an escort, and she was also found in the exact territory that the suspect was sadly dumping bodies. There's been a lot of speculation and polarization on this topic, so let me know what you guys think, if you think that it's a coincidence that someone that was an escort advertised on Craigslist and was found in the exact area. We'll get into more information a little bit later, and I think that it might sway you in one direction over another, but as it stands right now, he has not been convicted of her death. One of the most disturbing elements, aside from the sheer brutality of this case, is the fact that the perpetrator contacted some of the families after the loved ones had been missing for some time, sometimes from their own phone. He called additionally from burner phones and block numbers and would say some of the most horrific things that you could imagine, such as, "Do you think you'll ever see her again? You won't. I killed her." I mean, who does that? Someone dark and demented. Luckily, this ended up allowing the police department to retrieve cell tower information and hone in on a specific area in Manhattan that some of these calls were coming from. Karma. In January of 2020, the police department found a piece of evidence and immediately released it to the public in hopes of receiving some tips. It was a black leather belt that had the letters WH or HM if flipped upside down, and it's rumored that this belt may have been used to bind one of the victims. Now, this hasn't seemed to create any waves, or there's no confirmation exactly of what could have been harvested off of this or what the significance is just yet, but I'm curious to see if that comes later in the trial. The Police County Commissioner, Rodney Harrison, decided that in February of 2022, it was time to form a task force combining the efforts of the New York State Police, Suffolk County Police, and the FBI. It had been a decade since these discoveries with no new leads. This meant that from 2011 through 2022, all of these cases sat unsolved. Imagine being in the community during this time. Imagine being the family and the loved ones and friends and just everybody, visitors even in that area during that time. Think about how, if you've ever had someone be murdered in your hometown or even a loved one, do you remember the fear that you felt? Because I think, even when I hear of a random shooting or anything where I live, it makes my stomach turn because you can't help but relate and feel empathy for the situation. And especially if you live close by, you're like, am I next? What is going on? So for years and years, this was going on with no answers. That's insane. The FBI worked to create a criminal profile and run it through a database. This is where the name Rex Heuermann first came up, based on both physical descriptions as well as his green truck. March 14th of 2022, he was officially considered a suspect. The FBI began surveilling him and doing work behind the scenes to cross-reference the location of the calls Heuermann had allegedly made to the families of the victims. The investigators then obtained a DNA sample from his own garbage in Midtown Manhattan, pizza crust. What I have yet to mention, though, at this point, is that a male's hairs were found on the burlap fabric that was used to wrap up the original Gilgo Four. And when compared to the DNA on the pizza crust that was thrown away, it was a match. On July 13th, 2023, Rex Heuermann was finally taken into custody based on profiling, physical descriptions, DNA samples, and all that cell tower activity. Now we're going to be moving on to background, where we talk about the victims' lives and legacy, and unfortunately, we will also be talking about the suspect's life. I won't say legacy because I don't think that he has one. Now, while planning my wedding, I was actually talking to my father-in-law, and he said something so profound to me, and it's funny because I don't think that he'll even remember it or realize that it was significant to me, but we were talking about our loved ones that have passed and that they wouldn't be in attendance for our wedding. He said that talking about memories and about loved ones that have passed on, that's actually how we keep them alive. And I recently mentioned this to my husband, that was very profound to me. And that's just a lesson that I will remember, coming from my father-in-law. And he actually said then, a man dies twice in his life. Once when he's physically gone, and once when people stop remembering him. And just a little bit more about me. My husband and my beautiful, beautiful in-law family, they're Mexican, 100%. And if you know anything about their culture, celebrating loved ones that have passed and continuing to celebrate them and talk about them is so important. And it's been one of the most beautiful parts of my marriage and my family. The reason that I wanted to share that, though, is because it's true. Sharing these memories and stories that we have about victims, that's the whole reason that true crime's important. The reason that this has to happen is because this is how we keep them alive. This is how we vindicate these people that didn't deserve what they got. I will say that some of the families of the victims were very outspoken, and they fought so hard for their loved ones, and others remained a little bit more behind the scenes, and sadly some were not able to be located. So there's varying amounts of information that I do have to share, but regardless, all of it's important. I'm going to do my very best to honor each and every single one of them. As much as he doesn't deserve any attention whatsoever or to be talked about at all, I do think that it's important that we talk about Rex Heuermann as well, for his background at least. A lot of times we look for ways to humanize these monsters, to look for different life events that possibly could have led them down this path. But let me say this loud and clear. There is nothing that can happen in someone's life to justify this type of behavior. But assessing for these patterns in their behavior and being informed to recognize them, it's important. Sadly, we can't control the existence of these evil criminals. but we do need to be vigilant and stay safe by staying away from them, and that's part of what understanding their behavior is all about. Melissa Barthelemy was born on April 14th, 1985, to her mom, Lynn. She attended high school in Buffalo, New York, and had dreams of becoming a cosmetologist, and she did just that. She had a passion for hair and wanting to make others feel beautiful. Melissa got her first job at Supercuts and got some experience under her belt before moving to the big city. She wanted to own her own salon someday, something that her killer stole from her, but one thing that he could not take from her was her beauty or her light. Melissa is remembered by her sister Amanda and her mom. She went missing from Midtown Manhattan in July of 2009. I know that I already touched on this, but Amanda is one of the people that received a call from her sister's phone after being missing for 2 weeks, and it was detailed to her what the psychotic killer actually did to her sister. I honestly don't even have words for this. I can't even fathom the level of evil and just truly how sadistic he was to double down. And it wasn't bad enough to just torture the victim. Now you're going to go and torture the family. I think what just breaks my heart the most, though, is to think, imagine you're worried sick about your loved one and you see your phone ringing and you see their name after being gone for 2 weeks and you think, oh, thank God, they're okay. And you pick up the phone and that's what you hear from someone. I can't even imagine the level of trauma that would have caused in her. And I feel so bad for her that she experienced that. He outright admitted killing her to Amanda. As if losing your loved one isn't horrific enough, this douchebag had to double down. Though this was traumatic, this mistake helped lead the police again to Midtown Manhattan. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, born on June 14th, 1982 in New London. She had the most stunning pale blue-green eyes and was known to be a great mom to her 2 little ones. Maureen was formerly working at Foxwoods Resort and Casino in New York as a card dealer. She is survived by her mother and her 2 children, daughter Nicolette and her son Dylan. Her sister Missy described her as smart and creative and loved being a mother despite its difficulties while being single. On July 9th, 2007, Maureen disappeared and forever changed her family. Amber Lynn Costello was born on February 10th, 1983, to Alfred and Margaret, and she also had a sister, Kimberly. Although growing up, her parents struggled, and they said that they did not have a lot, she always gave to others. Her sister described her as comforting, understanding, and always showed empathy to others regardless of what she was going through. Her friend and roommate in the Netflix documentary described her as quirky and goofy, something that I'm sure helped her cope with the daily struggles and demons that she faced. It was known that Amber struggled with addiction, though this does not define who she is as a human. Amber went missing on September 2nd, 2010, after a client called her and asked her to leave behind her purse and cell phone, and regretfully, she took this evil man's advice. Amber's roommate was an eyewitness to the suspect and described him as ogre-like and had a first-generation Chevy Avalanche. This was information that helped the investigation a decade later. Megan Waterman was born on January 19, 1988, to her parents Lorraine and Greg. Growing up, Megan was in an unsafe home environment, to say the least. Oftentimes, CPS was involved out of concern from her Nana Muriel. She was removed from Lorraine's custody by the state, something that Megan identified as a very traumatizing event in her life. Her grandparents were seen as real parents to her. Her aunt lovingly called her a jokester and said that she had so much sparkle and strong will about her. Her family said that she loved fashion and loved being a mother more than anything in the world. At the age of 18, Megan became a mom to a beautiful baby girl named Liliana, who misses her mom very much. It's reported that this little girl was everything to her. She enjoyed playing with her, being silly, and dancing with her precious little girl. Megan worked very hard to provide the best life that she could for her daughter. And heartbreakingly, she got caught stealing, trying to provide for her child in addition to working at a sandwich shop. When all of this wasn't enough to cover the bills and expenses as a new mom, she turned to a profession that ultimately led her down that fateful path. Megan was last seen on June 6, 2010, with her last cell phone activity being in Massapequa Park near her client's home. Megan's mom has since passed away. And although that is very, very sad to hear that she hasn't been able to see justice be served for her daughter, I'm sure that the reunion with her baby was beautiful. Shannan Gilbert was born on October 24th, 1986, to her mother Mary. Although there's no confirmation that Shannan had any affiliation with Rex Heuermann, her 911 call kicked off the cascade of events that led to the arrest of Rex Heuermann, the alleged serial killer. So her story deserves to be told in this case as well. She was last seen on May 1st, 2010, after meeting with a client that she met on Craigslist. Mary, Shannan's mother, has also passed since the discovery of her daughter. I cannot imagine how much the grief and constant effort to locate her child took a toll on her. How do you even sleep at night knowing that your child's missing? Despite it previously being thought to be hypothermia that took Shannan's life, the medical examiner completed an additional autopsy, and the second one determined that her cause of death was not undetermined, but it was actually strangulation. So it then went from undetermined to homicide. Many say that if Mary were still here, she would be fighting incessantly to advocate for her daughter to determine who did this to her. Little information is known about the next several victims, but when their identities are discovered, I will make sure to either do a follow-up video or put some additional information in the comment box down below. Valerie Mack was born on July 2nd, 1977. She had been missing for 20 years and has a son named Hart. She was discovered in Manorville, New York on September 5th, 2000, and additional remains were located at Gilgo Beach on April 4th, 2011. Valerie was an escort that worked in New Jersey and Philadelphia. Jessica Taylor went missing on July 21st, 2003, and remains for Jessica were located in Manorville in 2003 as well as Gilgo Beach in 2011, like we mentioned before. Karen Vergata went missing in 1996 in Fire Island, and partial remains were found on April 11th, 2011. She was 34 years old at the time of her death. Nobody had reported her missing. Not much is known about her life. Sandra Castillo went missing in 1993 and was found November 21st, 1993, in Southampton, Long Island. A man by the name of John Biltroff was previously charged with her murder, and now that has since changed. Though the next 3 victims have not been identified, Netflix did release some information about them. The Asian male was found in women's clothing, and police guessed that he was anywhere between 17 and 23, also likely Han Chinese, and had been deceased for over a decade. The unidentified little girl was found wearing a gold necklace and earrings at the time of her discovery in April of 2011, and only part of her remains were located. The unidentified mother was also partially located in 1996, and additional remains were found in 2011. All the investigators are releasing at this time is that the mother had a tattoo of a peach on her chest and was African American. This is terrifying if you think about the length of time these crimes have gone on for. The discovery of remains were 15 years apart. This means that we certainly have a serial killer on our hands, and one that has been committing countless crimes across a vast area over a long period of time. And I can't help but feel sick to my stomach about this, because I think what's most unsettling about this is what else could they have done that they're never going to admit to? How many other people are missing right now that either no one even knows are missing, or people have been looking, and for how long, that he knows the answer? Are we ever going to find out? Let's get into one of the most evil humans to walk the earth, Rex Heuermann. He's described as a husband, father, and architect, clearly a low profile to hide all of the heinous crimes that he's been committing, allegedly. Heuermann was born on September 13th, 1963 in Long Island, New York. He was raised in Massapequa Park and resided in the same home that he grew up in throughout his life. His father was an aerospace engineer, and he worked on designing and building satellites. His home life wasn't exactly picture perfect, and in fact, many said that he had a really tumultuous relationship with his father, frequently arguing, butting heads, and I'm sorry, that's not exactly your typical villain come-up story, because don't all people bicker with their parents and fight with them growing up? I don't know. Those that knew him in his youth, though, described him as socially awkward. They said he was oftentimes bullied due to his lack of social skills, which isn't surprising knowing what we know now. At Berner High School, though, Rex's fellow students said that he kept to himself and he was a loner and chose to self-isolate and remain an outcast. Though some others said that he had a huge mean streak to him and that if you approached him, he would lash out. Heuermann was briefly married to a woman by the name of Elizabeth Ryan from 1990 to 1991, and then he remarried Asa Ellerup in 1996. He fathered 2 children with Asa and remained with her until his arrest, and their divorce was just recently finalized, actually. A major question we all want to know, or at least I want to know, is how could she have not noticed the signs? How could she be married to someone for this long and have no clue that he was doing the things that he was doing? Was she an accomplice? I'm sure we'll find out soon. Ellerup stated that she was having a very difficult time believing that the man that she was married to for 27 years was even capable of committing these crimes. And I quote, "withhold judgment until after the trial to determine if she felt that he were guilty or innocent," end quote. What a luxury. I wish that the victims and families had that same thought. She then went on to say, "I have given him the benefit of the doubt, as we all deserve," end quote. Something to remember, though, is that true master manipulators, narcissists, and or sociopaths, they have a unique ability to isolate you and make you feel completely disconnected from reality. One of Rex's coworkers actually said, "I had no idea that there were 2 Rex Heuermanns out there," end quote, because he truly lived a double life. He owned an architectural firm in Manhattan called RH Consulting and Associates that he opened up in 1994. Something that I found really interesting, though, is that his house almost seems to represent the duality within himself. The neighbors in the Netflix documentary said that his home was the only one in the entire neighborhood that was unkept, and that's putting it lightly. Heuermann's home was in disarray. It looked completely out of place, being as honestly almost dilapidated as it was. Not something that you'd expect from a successful Manhattan architect, am I right? I don't know about you guys, but I live in a state where we have a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright homes, and if you know anything about Frank Lloyd Wright, he was an incredible architect, and his homes were art. And I feel like that's a kind of a natural goal and dream that many architects have, is if they can take that skill outside of the home, of course they're going to do that to their house as well. So the fact that he neglected and allowed this grotesque looking house compared to the rest, it was just such an image of who he is on the inside. Now we're moving on to our assessment, and assessment in this case is going to be our legal portion. So now that we've gone over the situation and background, it's time to go over the arrest and charges. In future cases, this is actually going to be where I'm going over trial information, but like it's been mentioned a couple of times, the trial date has not even been set yet. Going back to July 13th of 2023, Rex was arrested and brought into Suffolk County Police Department. Within 1 hour of being taken into custody, police were at his house with a warrant, and they seized and tore apart his house from top to bottom. Among the items that they seized, the officers found what was called a blueprint on his computer. It contained not only a body prep checklist, but also ways to improve his crimes, including get more sleep before the hunt and have a story set. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. The fact that this man went so far as to write out how to perfect his crime, I don't think you could ever dream of a better example of premeditation than this. He is a monster. The police department had over 300 subpoenas to build this case against him, and like I said before, it's ongoing. Rex Heuermann was charged with 7 murders to today's date. Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and second-degree murder of Valerie Mack. In June of 2024, Heuermann was also charged with murdering Jessica Taylor in 2003 and Sandra Castillo in 1993. He maintains his innocence and has pled not guilty to all charges. Like I said, this goes back to that sick feeling that I have of Are we ever going to find out the truth? Are we ever going to have Rex Heuermann be a man and step up and say, yep, this is what I did. This is where all the people are, and you missed some? No, because let's be honest, do we really think we've found all of his victims? I highly doubt it. I feel like there's probably many more to come with a monster like this. So to close, in our recommendation section, I believe that the alleged killer, Rex Heuermann, is the true definition of a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that Megan's roommate hit it on the head when he said that the perpetrator was ogre-like, and it's actually a compliment given how abysmal his soul is on the inside, or lack thereof. These women were taken advantage of at their lowest when most were trying their hardest to just provide for themselves and for some their children. I think that targeting women that are down on their luck and also afraid to go to the police for assistance is a completely different type of a power play. This just shows what a heartless predator Rex Heuermann is. Though I know that Gloria Allred's going to do a phenomenal job representing these women, my heart aches, not only for the victims, both known and unidentified, but also for everyone left behind. All the additional trauma and loss experienced isn't something that a judge can sentence Rex Heuermann for. And it doesn't seem fair or just to me. That's the worst part about these cases, is in any loss, a judge can't sentence for that. A judge can't sentence for the trauma and pain and decades of generational trauma that can be caused from crimes like this. All that I know and all that I can say is, after such a heavy case, this man deserves what's coming his way, even though there's no punishment in existence that could fit the crime. If you've made it this far into the video, I want to personally say thank you for sticking around and listening to what I had to say. I know that watching true crime videos is very heavy, but if you liked the video, please like it, subscribe, and comment your future video suggestions and recommendations down below. Last but not least, I want to shout out my incredible husband for encouraging me to pursue my dreams and for editing this video. I know there was a lot of outtakes because I kept stumbling over my words. So thanks, babe. But lastly, thank you so much for being here. Please take good care of yourselves. Nurses orders. Bye, guys.